All right, guys, everybody see my presentation here? Is it showing up for you guys? Okay, good. Excellent. All right, so just a little disclaimer. Obviously, we're not an attorney, so make sure that you consult your attorney prior to making any type of decisions in reference to your security or laws or so on and so forth. Having said that, so we're going to try to keep this relatively short. Just going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what the background on SB760 is, the new requirements, challenges. I'm going to go through the highlighted law real quick. So we're a licensed security consulting company in Maryland. We do armed and unarmed security officers as well as private detective work. We're considered a premium security provider. I'm an MPCTC instructor, so that's the Maryland Police Corrections and Training Commission instructor. We do provide active shooter prevention, armed and unarmed security officers, so on and so forth. We are licensed in Maryland and Delaware. We do specialize in the cannabis industry and HOAs, apartments, so on and so forth. We're A+ rated. Personally, I'm 15 years prior law enforcement. I've got about 30 years in security work. I'm SWAT certified, protective details specialist, and I used to work at U.S. Department of State as well as Wacomico County Sheriff's Office in Salisbury City. So the background on this bill was that, and it has passed, by the way, and it has been signed by the governor, so it's definitely going into effect. So for years, Maryland security didn't require any training whatsoever. So either contract security officers or personnel that you had on your property just didn't require any training. Basically, contract security had to go through a process for Maryland State Police licensing, which was essentially a background check, fingerprints, and it would issue a Maryland security clearance card to the security guard. The company itself had to go through a background check, and to be a company licensee, typically you had to have 5 prior years of law enforcement. But in-house security, so if you had your own security personnel, it didn't require any training or licensing whatsoever. And for an armed contract security officer, the only thing that Maryland required is that they undergo a 16-hour handgun class, which is essentially the same class that regular citizens would take. So there have been several incidents in Baltimore City involving shootings by security guards, including alleged unjustified shootings which prompted SB760, including one, there's actually several shootings at a bar, and also the national police reform prompted SB760. So it just passed this last session. And these are just some of the incidents that occurred. On March 20th, a security guard shot an individual at Fells Point outside of a bar. There was another security guard that shot another person outside of a bar that threw a brick at him. And then another security guard in Baltimore City shot a person in a grocery store. That was actually basically found to be justified. But so what the new requirements are gonna do is basically anybody that has an in-house or contract security staff has to obey these regulations. And we're going to go through what the regulations are and why they're so important to comply with. Basically, it's going to require all security personnel, it doesn't matter whether they're in-house or contract, to undergo a minimum of 10 hours initial training, 8 hours of in-service training for recertification. The training has to be certified by the Maryland Police and Corrections Training Commission. And we'll go through what that entails. All armed security personnel must have a handgun permit regardless if they're in-house. So it used to be if you hired your own in-house personnel, if they were on your own property, you could tell them that they could carry a gun. That's no longer the case. So they have to have a handgun permit. They also have to be licensed by the Maryland State Police Licensing Division as a security guard. So in order to do that, they have to undergo the licensing process. So they have to undergo that training. And they have to fill out a background packet and send it to Maryland State Police with a fee. Doesn't matter what the title is. If they provide any security services, they have to comply with the law. So it doesn't matter whether you call them a door greeter or what have you. If that security person is checking IDs, or that security person, or that person, I should say, stopping people from entry, again, that qualifies as performing a security function. If you're a property owner and you have your own in-house security, that means that you have to carry a minimum of $500,000 security liability. If you employ under 5 security guards, and it doesn't matter whether they're full, part-time, or whatever the deal is. If it's over 5 security guards, you have to carry a total of 1 million security liability. They can't be 1099 employees, so you can't kind of get out of it by hiring a 1099 person as a security contractor. This surprisingly doesn't apply to bars. It doesn't apply to so-called bouncers that are unarmed. It would apply to any type of bouncer that's armed. So challenges with this is not all security staff will meet the new requirements. You might have security staff that are already on your payroll if you're an in-house security provider, right, that are not going to qualify for Maryland security clearance card. So they might have something in their path like a theft or something of that nature that they may very well not be licensed. If that's the case and they can't be licensed, you have no other choice but to terminate those people or reassign them to another job. This means that you're not going to be able to hire off the street security. So you can't advertise for security guards, hire them on, and have them provide a security service in-house without them going through this process. Again, each security officer has to be licensed by the Maryland State Police. You have to make sure that their training is current. You have to carry liability insurance. The property is liable for non-compliance with criminal and civil penalties if this isn't the case. And additionally, last but not least, if any use of force is applied to any person, a use of force report has to be submitted to the Maryland State Police Licensing Division. So what they define a use of force is anything that is not verbal or a simple escort out of a door. Okay, so if you put hands on the person, if you use pepper mace, if you use any type of defensive action, obviously a handgun, baton, so on and so forth, electronic stun device, these qualify as a use of force for the Maryland State Police. So how is this going to affect your security team? You're going to have to, if you're still considering having in-house security, you're going to have to manage accreditation of your staff. So that staff accreditation has to be kept on file for inspection. Again, you'll have to manage certification for weapons carried. That's pepper spray, baton, handgun permit. Each security guard will have to attend training, including training for renewal of licensing. You'll have to submit licensing applications, again, to the Maryland State Police. You got to obtain your own security liability insurance. And again, you'll have to include use of force incidents. And I'm going to talk real quick about the certification for spray, baton, and handguns if you have armed personnel. There's something in police work and security work called the use of force continuum. It's very important. So use of force continuum basically dictates that it's almost like a slanted line. At the bottom of use of force is officer presence. So when you see a police car in your rear view mirror, you're doing 75 on the beltway, right? In the 55 zone, what do? You slow down, right? So it's the same thing. The use of force starts out at the lowest level of control, right? The next is verbal commands. The next is soft hand control tactics, basically escort holds or escort movement. The next one is less lethal, so that's pepper spray, basically. The next one is hard hand control tactic strikes. The next one is semi-lethal, which is a baton or stun device. And next one is a lethal force. Now, on that use of force continuum, the security officer or police officer can skip portions of that use of force as necessary. So let's say that there's a suspect that comes in that's an active shooter, right? Just starts shooting up the place. Well, obviously, that's a lethal use of force. So the police officer that responds, or security officer, can jump right from officer presence to lethal force, right? But they have to be able to slide up and down that use of force continuum on the fly. So let's say that a person walks in with a crowbar, starts smashing stuff up. Is a crowbar necessarily a use of deadly force potentially, right? So he starts going after someone with a crowbar. The security officer draws down on him. The suspect drops the crowbar. Okay, so now it's not a lethal force incident. He's sliding back down that use of force scale to something that's possibly less lethal, like a pepper spray or a baton or semi-lethal, right? To get that situation under control. So it's problematic if you have security personnel, just FYI, and they're only carrying a firearm. So a lot of places, dispensaries, have a security guard, whether it's contract or in-house, and that guy only has a gun. Horrible, okay, because there's no way to articulate that that person has any use of force continuum. Okay, so when you get sued for that use of force, right, guys just carrying a gun or what have you, that's very problematic, because in that instance, that person only has two options, basically, potentially three, but two options, basically verbal commands, okay, and going straight to a firearm. So there's no intermediate. So it's something to consider. And if you have questions about this, it's really a good idea to hire a security consulting company. If you, like us, if you don't have internal security policies and you have your own security force, you really need to get them rapidly. So you got to have something in writing as far as what your security policies are in regards to your security personnel. And that includes training, that includes what the hiring requirements are for that security officer or security officers. That includes response to incidents. So how are incidents supposed to be handled? Obviously, you can't, generate every type of incident imaginable in your use of force in your training, or rather in your policies, but you have to have something written. So if you are going to say, oh, well, our security officers don't go hands-on with anybody, absolutely fine. Okay, if that's the policy, then that's the policy. But that policy has to be written, has to be in written form. And what happens if they go over that policy, they break that policy? At least you can refer to that policy and be like, look, our personnel were trained not to go hands-on. They went hands-on, we terminated that employee for cause, or whatever the deal is. But, there has to be some level of use of force continuum in that policy, right? So those are things to all consider if you're dealing with an in-house security staff. And the reason why it has to be in writing is because the first thing that a civil attorney is going to do is subpoena your policies, guaranteed. So it's also a good idea to incorporate a security consulting company, because that limits your liability in the fact that you can articulate in a civil case that we went through the steps in order to we went to an exterior source in order to provide good security consulting for that need. So therefore, it insulates you a little bit. So what are the current challenges? Well, right now, there's no current direction on how to receive training or who's going to offer it. Typically, in the past, Maryland Police Training and Corrections Commission have only authorized MPTC instructors, certified MPTC instructors, to teach these courses. So for special police, they only allow MPTC instructors to teach it, and for police officers and correctional officers. So it's unknown currently how this is going to shake out, if it's going to be some kind of online course or what have you. It's unknown. It's also unknown how you're going to submit use of force forms. There's really no mechanism in place for that. The Maryland State Police obviously have to develop this as does MPTC. There's a lack of staff at Maryland State Police and the Maryland State Police and MPTC. Biggest thing here is that the last time we were at a meeting at MESA, which is the Maryland Investigative and Security Association, which I'm on the board of, they had two people working in security guard section in terms of troopers, and they had maybe 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 civilians. So that's going to be problematic. There's going to be definitely a logjam of applications. Now, under the statute, it's not necessary for people to start working that they have to have their security clearance card in hand. However, their application must be submitted to the Maryland State Police. So what happens if you don't comply? You just don't want to deal with it. Well, that's going to create a lot of liability on your part, because what's going to happen is, obviously, a cop can't pop out of the woodwork and inspect all businesses in Maryland. It's just an impossibility. But if there's an incident, really any incident that gets reported, this is where you're going to come under scrutiny. So the first thing that Maryland State Police are going to ask is, does this person have a Maryland security clearance card? Has it been through the training, so on and so forth? And if not, the liability falls on you as a business owner, or property management. So let's look at the benefits of in-house security and issues with it. The benefits are, you can choose your own people. You can hire people that you want to hire. You're not getting a contract security guy. It's less expensive than contract security. We all know this. This is why people hire their own security personnel. You can make sure that they follow your policies and procedures if they exist, and they answer directly to you, right? So problems with in-house security is recruiting. Can you get people to work? And if you can, are they quality people with any type of training, right? There's a lack of policies and procedures. There's a lack of true understanding of how security works, in terms of what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do, and the law surrounding that. You're also typically going to get unskilled or unprofessional labor, especially, our friends in Ocean City. They kind of put an ad out for a security guard, and whoever walks through the door, they're going to, hey, you got to watch the property. Okay. So, but that's not good when it comes to civil liability. You're going to have to maintain records and licensing, for all of your personnel, and you've got direct liability. So if something happens with that security officer, you're directly liable for his or her actions. The benefits and issues with contract security. So your contractor, if you hire them like us or whomever, whatever security company you go with, should handle all certifications, licensing, training, uniforms, and staffing requirements. You don't have to worry about any of it. They're supposed to handle it for you. The security company should answer to you. If you have a problem, you should be able to call them and articulate that there's a problem, and they should fix it relatively quickly. They're required to maintain a level of professionalism. If they're not professional, obviously you're going to axe the contract, right? You'll get another contractor that is professional. They handle complaints and problems, especially by Maryland State Police, who they directly answer to. And they should handle all extended training requirements. So like I told you before, there's in-service training is going to be 8 hours before renewal. They're going to have to handle that. Problems with it is that this is a get what you pay for industry. So if you want a $13 an hour security guard, that's definitely not going to happen through a contract company. Contract companies are much more expensive because they're handling these other things. They're handling licensing, they're handling training, so on and so forth. Also, if you're looking at a $25 an hour company versus a $35 or $45 an hour company, there's a distinct difference in the level of service that you're going to get. First thing is that training, like when we train security officers, we absorb all the cost of that training. So our guys, even though we're not required presently to give them any training whatsoever, that's a severe liability, right? So we bring our personnel in for untold hours of training. I mean, these guys get, especially our armed guys, get in-service training. They have to qualify every 3 to 6 months, usually every 3 months, every quarter. We have an in-house firearm simulator. We do classes on pepper, certified classes on pepper, baton, if that's what they're carrying. Some of our security officers don't carry anything, but JPX, and less lethal devices, and so on and so forth, which is all certified training. So, we have to absorb all that cost, and that's why we're more expensive. Typically, again, we're more expensive than in-house security. There is a vicarious liability in this, in the fact that if you're going to hire a security guard company, you got to make sure that they're a valid security guard company. So there have been cases where security guard companies, especially in Ocean City, dock their licenses. So they basically get a copy of a license, they'll change some stuff on it using a PDF editor and basically submit it to you. Don't just trust that. There's a way to reach out to the Maryland State Police. All you got to go is go to Maryland State Police Licensing Division and shoot them an email to the security guard section asking whether these people have a valid guard license. If they don't hire them. Doesn't matter, how much they're charging. Yeah, there's been, like I said, there's a number of security companies that have done this, and also make sure that they have a valid COI. So they just don't have a general liability policy. They have one specifically for security operations, because general liability typically does not cover security operations. So if you have an in-house staff, security staff, and you don't have a separate liability policy for security guards, your security guards, you really need to get that. And again, we talked about problems carrying only a firearm. You know, if you've got security guards there, whether they're contractor or they're in-house and they're only carrying a gun, that's a huge liability. And there's also issues with carrying that gun. So let's say that person is carrying a firearm and they only have what's deemed as a class 1 or class 2 holster. That's terrible, because there's absolutely no weapons retention to that holster. So it's something that you have to really look at and take a look at their holster. If their holster looks like it's not secure, it's not secure. The other detraction here, or problems here, is that if you're dealing with a large security company, they're typically slow to respond. So, I mean, you try to get a hold of your contract representative, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, generally not going to happen. You might receive a phone call back in a day or two. Let's move on to the next slide here. So when does this take effect? Well, this takes effect June 1st, 2024. Sounds like it's a ways off, but it's better to get your ducks in a row now, especially before the next season comes up, or if you're a dispensary, you know, before it hits the new licensing requirements, which, you know, security guards, contract security guards, have to be not only licensed through MSP, Maryland State Police, but they also have to be licensed through what used to be MMCC's and now MCA or whatever, but they have to be licensed through that agency as well. So it's important that you get that stuff in place. Having said that, I'm going to actually show you the law now.
You got to talk now.
Yeah, Evan, I got a question for you.
All right.
On the new law, under JK says security guard means an individual provides security guard services to any person on behalf of a security guard agency. Well, down here at the beach, all us managers, all my managers with DCMA, myself, all my employees, we all act as guards, security guards.
Right. So
my maintenance guys are doing security. I do security. My admin does security. We all do security. Mm-hmm. So the way I'm reading it really doesn't apply to us down here.
It does. And I'm going to show you why. So this is the actual Senate bill. And I've got highlights here. Okay. So this says a security guard means any individual that provides security on behalf of a security guard agency. Okay, this has been amended. Okay, so that means that it's actually any security employer. Okay, is an employee, a security guard of an employer, provides security services to the guard employer. Okay, so, and it means by any other title. So it doesn't matter what you title these people. They could be, if they're providing any type of security service, this falls under this law.
So my maintenance man who does maintenance and is working on something, sees somebody doing something, tells them, hey, you can't do that. Then all of a sudden he becomes a security guard.
There is no, here's the thing. There is no definition as to, you know, is he a citizen reporting that there's a problem? Or is he a person that's actually providing security services? Okay.
No, none of my employees are doing security services. They all have jobs. Like even in my nighttime, we have a front desk where they're doing check-ins at nighttime for renters and all that. I mean, none of my employees are actually doing security where they're, you know, detaining or doing any type of that. If they see an issue, and that's with every condo down here. First thing we do is we call the police. They have the police deal with it.
Well, so if they're calling the police, that, you know, they're not providing a security function. If they're approaching anybody and asking them whether they reside there, whether they live there, they're checking IDs, they're you know, telling people that they can't do something, okay, in terms of a non-management aspect. So that is providing under this code is providing a security function. So where does this, how do you articulate this? Well, the issue is not going to be, again, that the Maryland State Police is going to pop out of the woodwork and say, okay, this person's providing a security function. That's not going to be the issue. The issue is that if anything happens, are you compliant with this new law? So, and the state police is going to look at whether the person that's working meets the definition of that person taking any type of security action. That's going to be the hiccup. And the other hiccup is that it is a civil attorney going to look at this and think that that person, or consider that person, is taking any type of security action. Now, there are attorneys right now that have locked onto this in Baltimore and are advertising for new clients that and you can do a search for it, that are going to violate this regulation. So I'm not here to tell you that you have to hire a contract security company, and I'm not here to tell you that all your personnel have to be licensed as security guards. All I'm telling you is what has been passed in reference to this. So if they end up taking any type of security action, then they're going to fall under this code, right? So let's say they see a fight in progress, they break up a fight in progress or whatever. That's a security action. Let's say that they tell someone that they need to leave the property that's not renting or is a resident there. Okay, that's going to be a security action. Okay, so if they touch anybody, okay, that's going to be a security action. That's a second-degree assault. So that's where this law is going to kick into effect. Understand that more than likely the state is not going to go out trying to find businesses that are not licensed by security. What's going to happen is this is going to bite them where it counts when something occurs. And that's why if your personnel, and I don't know, because I don't know what your personnel are or what they do, okay, but if they're providing any type of what amounts to a security action, then they have to comply with this, unfortunately.
Okay, because I know there's another part of it too. It's the same thing. We have pool attendants. Then all of a sudden they're becoming a security guard too.
It is
like there's going to be a lot of gray areas on this whole thing.
There's a lot of gray areas on this, and basically they're going to choose what to enforce and what not to enforce. And here's the problem: is that no one knows about this, which is crazy to me. Okay, so I'm trying to put the word out about it so properties in Ocean City and dispensaries and so on and so forth and businesses don't get hung up on this. It is a gray area. I mean, if you have a lifeguard that now breaks up a fight or is kicking people out or is doing something, checking IDs and so on and so forth, does that fall under a security guard function? It may very well be, but it's going to depend upon the incident. A lot of citizens don't know this as of yet, so it's going to depend upon the type of incident that occurs. And that's, I mean, are they wearing a shirt that says lifeguard? Are they wearing a shirt that says security? How are they identifiable as a security person? So on and so forth. I think that's going to play a major role. So yeah, a maintenance guy telling people, hey, get off the property, that could be construed as basically an employee of the property just telling them to leave. I agree with you. Okay, but where it changes is if that maintenance guy is operating as a security officer. The issue here is that in what's written is doesn't matter what their title is if they're operating in a security capacity. So let's say you hire a guy that their job is to secure the property. Okay, their job is to patrol and secure the property, but you call them a courtesy patrol or you call them I don't know, whatever. That is a security guard, according to this law. So I'm not telling you have to license all your staff as security officers. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is if you have someone that's their primary job is to secure the property and they're doing security guard work, then that falls under this code.
Okay.
And this is what I'm talking about here. Security guard employer means any person or company that employs security guards only to provide security guard services to that person or property. This is the exception for bars and taverns, even though that's kind of part of the reason why this law was created. There's a lot of backlash on that, so that doesn't include that. This is the requirement that security guard has to be licensed by the Maryland State Police. This is the section that, again, they have to be licensed by state police. They can't work unless they've been licensed by the state police. This covers fees. If they're a prior police officer and they've been fired because they were making or had a use of force incident or making false statements, they can't be employed. This is your training requirement. It's actually 12 hours of initial training and 8 hours of in-service. If they have a badge, the badge has to be approved by the Maryland State Police Licensing Division. These are the training requirements. So this is the training requirements that's going to be required by MPTC, one of which is that they have to have relevant criminal law training. They have to have appropriate use of force training. They have to have alternatives to force training. They have to have de-escalation of force, promoting proper interactions with individuals that are juveniles and have behavioral health or disability issues. This training, again, has to be required by, or certified rather, by MPCTC. They have to have a valid permit to carry a handgun if they're carrying a handgun, regardless whether they're in-house or external now. This defines the use of force policy and what's required for reporting. So it's any physical striking of an individual, any significant physical contact that restricts the movement of an individual, including control techniques without the individual's consent, discharge of a firearm, discharge of pepper mace, the use of electronic control device. Use of force does not include mere presence, verbal commands, or escorting an individual with minimal resistance. Licensed security guard agency or security guard employer has to comply with it. They have to include in the use of force report the type of force that was encountered, the type of force used, the location of the incident or force was used, whether the individual against whom the force was used was arrested, and if known what charges were received, whether the individual against the use of force was required medical care, whether the security guard are requesting medical care, and the demographic information of the person and the security guard. So, basically race. And this is the insurance requirement for properties that have in-house security. So again, it's $500,000 if you have under 5 security persons, $1 million if you have over 5 security persons of liability insurance. It says general liability. I highly recommend against that because a lot of general liability policies will not cover security persons. You have to get a specific security liability policy that includes assault and battery. And this is when it takes effect, June 1st, 2024. So I'll open it up to any questions. I don't want to tie you guys up all day. I know you guys have other things you got to do, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can answer for you. Anybody? Okay, well, I hope this has been informative. If you guys want a copy of this, let me know. I'll be happy to send it to you. Sandy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Eric, down here, I know H2O is probably going to go away. I'm down in Ocean City.
Sure.
And hopefully it's going away. And Ocean City's obviously doing all kinds of things to mitigate it. But that weekend, we do try to hire security. We don't try to do it in-house. And so far, we've been using like off-duty police or things like that. How would that affect us if it does affect us in any way as far as insurance or anything goes?
So that's a good question. So if you're hiring off-duty police officers, technically this bill still applies. Off-duty police officers are are considered security guards because they're off duty. So they have to be licensed by the Maryland State Police, and they have to have a security guard license. This kind of goes by the wayside lots of times in terms of it's overlooked. Is it going to be enforced? I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you if there's an incident regarding these off-duty police officers and they're identified as working as off-duty police officers, not in their jurisdiction, then the liability is definitely going to fall back upon you.
Okay.
Yep. So if you're hiring like Salisbury or whoever else, guys come up and work, that liability is going to fall on you. So there's no exceptions in that, unfortunately. Any other questions I can answer for you? Alex?
No, I'm good. That was the biggest one because that's really the only time we have quote unquote security functions. And I guess we've been fortunate in not having any incidences, and obviously they would have been in the past at this point in time. And we're still trying to figure out if we're going to hire this year or not, and if so, who. And obviously, it's a 3-day period, but it still sounds like we're affected by this law.
Well, you are, but it doesn't take effect until 2024, June 1st of 2024. So
well, that's true. So we might get through this year and decide we don't need it in 24 too.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. And, you do have a level of protection if you're hiring off-duty police officers in their jurisdiction, because if those off-duty police officers take police action while they're working, then that police action typically falls on the police department. Now, any lawsuit obviously is going to go for deep pockets. So, and that's where the problem lies, is that once the attorney figures out that person is working for your property, even though they took police action and that police officer is covered by their own liability through the police department because they're acting as a police officer, still, if their arrest is bad or there was an assault or something like that, that's where this comes into play. So now if you're hiring somebody outside of that jurisdiction, that's 10 times worse in terms of liability concerns.
Okay.
So just FYI. So hiring MSP or hiring Ocean City is one thing, but hiring somebody outside of that, and even then, these guys are supposed to have a security guard card. Just FYI. I know most of them don't, but they're supposed to.
Okay. Well, it's good to know.
Yep, no problem. Alex, did you have any questions?
I don't really have a question right now. I appreciate all this information. Definitely helpful. I definitely learned some stuff in here. I have 2 staff members that have the HQL and are getting the wear and carry permit. So basically, they'll have to be licensed as a Maryland certified security guard, which is fine. We meet the requirements for it. And we do have a security company that we hire, but there's a lot of stuff on here that I was appreciated you bringing up that I'm going to bring up to the owner of that company just to make sure that they're staying compliant on their end with the licensing, make sure everybody's got the right holsters, making sure our policies and procedures are printed and kind of posted in the back even. So we have a policy and procedure for the security guards, but with us going into rec July 1st, we probably run into more problems with more traffic. So I want to make sure that, we're on point with all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's always good to get a copy of their use of force policy. And typically what you're going to hear is, well, we tell them not to touch anybody. Okay, but what's the use of force policy? I need to see a written copy of it. And lots of times they're not going to be able to give it to you because they don't have one. And if they don't have one, that's a problem. So I would definitely ask for a copy of their use of force policy, and don't be afraid to ask. I mean, these guys, they're contracted for you, right? So they should have all the stuff in writing. They should have all the necessary paperwork of all the training that these security guys receive or have received, and something that you need to be aware of. So
Yeah, for sure. With the JPX and things like that, I know I've gotten the emails before about that. And Forrest, I work with Forrest when he comes in weekly, and he carries it too. So he showed me, how that works because I was inquiring about it. And you guys do the training for that? You said there has to be like, qualified training for JPX or with the taser, and things like that, because that's something that we want to add to our security mix, is a JPX, taser, baton.
yeah,
We have the pepper spray and stuff, but it'd be nice to have a couple other
options.
less lethal options.
Yep.
So I'll reach out to
Stuff.
you about that if we need to do the training for the JPX or the taser. That way
Sure.
we have do you provide like a certificate or something I can put in a file? That way if anything happens, I can lean back on that.
Yep, absolutely. So we're certified instructors for that. The one thing I would tell you is if you're carrying pepper, make sure that you're certified in carrying pepper too. We do that certification as well. And make sure your security guards have less lethal options on them. So they should have a duty belt or something that has, if they're carrying a weapon, then they definitely should have pepper spray or baton. Now I know that, some dispensaries think that looks a little too militaristic, but bottom line is that's necessary in the use of force continuum. And a lot of people don't understand that. They just want the deterrence of a guy carrying a gun. Okay, but if somebody has a less lethal issue, they need to have those less lethal options on their belt. If they're not carrying them, they need to have them. And if they have them, they need to be certified in them.
Right. Yeah, that's great feedback. I appreciate you sending the invite out for this call. It's definitely a lot of stuff in here that's beneficial. So I appreciate it. And thanks for doing all the research on the new law. I know that's a lot of work.
It is, yeah. I actually testified on it in the Senate in Maryland. I was kind of outweighed by a lot of the other big guns that were there. But it's crazy. I mean, no one knows about this. So I mean, the Walmart loss prevention, I mean, they're going to have to comply. Any hotels that have any kind of security are going to have to comply. Any businesses that have their own security are going to have to comply. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but no one knows about it. And it's not really going to amount to anything until something happens. And that's when they're going to clamp down and they're going to say, okay, well, you're not in compliance with this law. And the issue is that ignorance of the law is not an exception, right? I can't go around, stabbing people saying, oh, I didn't know it was illegal, right? So, even though I was never served with any kind of documentation saying it's illegal to stab people, I can't do it, right? So ignorance of the law is no exception. And that's why I've been trying to get the word out to people. I mean, it's not really a sales thing. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just don't want people getting jammed up over it.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know about in there. So I'm glad that, you were able to explain that to us.
Yeah, get the word out to the. I mean, I don't. If you go to MDMDA events or you have any contact with other dispensaries, MDMDA is supposed to get that video out today to everybody. Hopefully, people will watch it. And I'll probably do another one, next year, early next year. But get the word out to people because it definitely jam people up. So
Yeah, for sure, definitely will. I know a few other colleagues at other dispensaries that I'll talk to about it that have security that I'm sure need to know these same rules and get ahead of it, because with us being a licensed dispensary through the state of Maryland and us being inspected by, retired state police and stuff like that, we have to be extra on top of it because they can come in here and call us out when not following, state laws. So,
and the thing is this, don't think that MCA or MMCC or whatever they want to call them, whatever they're renamed as, don't think them and MSP don't talk, right? Because they are retired state cops. So don't think they won't pick up a phone. I mean, it's scuttlebutt happens all over the place. You know what I mean? So. Oh
yeah, they let me know. They've told me that they're still they still have a badge. A lot of the inspectors. So I don't know. They're still cops, I guess, in some capacity.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate it.
No problem. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email.
I sure will. Thanks for the call.
All right, sir. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.